Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Daria and you're watching Daria show. Today we will talk about semiotics and modern art. To be honest, contemporary art, because today we have special guest, a specialist from Argentina, who will answer several questions regarding the use of semiotics in contemporary art creation.
Hello everybody, my name is Aluminé Rosso. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, as Daria said. I'm a researcher, professor and curator, but now I'm living in Paris, where I work as an independent curator and also as communication and positioning advertiser and art journalist. I have a master's degree in art criticism and a postgraduate degree in contemporary art curation, both with a semiological approach. The last 4 years, I was full-time dedicated to study museums of modern and contemporary art from Buenos Aires, New York, Paris, and London. I analyzed the buildings of these institutions as intermediary discourse. That is a concept developed by Oscar Traversa. That means that the building of each museum itself a discourse which configurates an experiential promise to the visitor. In a few words, my hypothesis is that we could know what we will live inside the museum before we enter the building.
Thank you, Aluminé. I'm personally very excited for our talk, and I really hope that our guests, spectators, are as much excited as I am. So here I come with the first question. You know, I was also studying art in my research and how one can navigate the communication between artist and audience. And we both know that art is actually emotional expression of the author. It's like a flow of the feelings, emotions, and it's unmeasurable, to be honest. So can semiotics find the tools to overcome these limits and other just descriptive methods which normally used in museums?
Well, I think that overcoming the description is the challenge of semiotics. I will talk about art, which is my subject and my object of study. And we know that for a long time, the artwork analysis was or keep being, indeed, very descriptive, as you said. But we are lucky because around 1960s, the semiotics arrived. So for me, it's quite hard to answer that question because the perspective I'm learning came from the Peircean theory, from Charles Sanders Peirce, the logician, the scientific from United States. And more precisely, it came from the Argentinian school, mainly the theory developed by Ellie Monroe. According to that theory, of course, we have to do a very, very long descriptive work, but we are focused on the analysis of the circulation of the discourse. And that, of course, includes art. And I will do two stops. The first one is that Verón has explained basically that everything is a discourse because the meaning is materialized in a kind of support that could be writing text, images, painting, dancing, because it includes the body and the trajectories we make. The second stop is that when we study the circulation, we are talking about the distance between the condition of production and the condition of recognition of the discourse. So, our work is to analyze the circulation, understood as the gap, the écart en français, and the désajuste between the condition of production and condition of recognition of discourse. Why I explain that? Because if we follow the theory of Peirce, we conceive the meaning as a dynamic process and design as a triadic entity. According to that, the transmission of messages is never linear, as we learn in school. The possibilities of reception are always infinite. And it, of course, is talking about art. So for answering your question, I think that the work of semioticians is mostly to know how to compare and how to compare object, what object to compare, and how to create a network of relationships between them, a network which can help you to understand in this moment, in this time, the production of meaning of discourses, which is analyzed, in my case, the museums and the artwork. As Veron said, we have to recreate the fragments of the semiosis network. And my favorite phrase from him is, by analyzing product, we reconstruct process. For example, we can describe Guernica in a pictorial way or according to art history, but we can also try to recreate the network of these courses, which left footprints in the painting, in the canvas. If we take, for example, the small hand taking the light in the Guernica, it could make us think to the idea of progress, which was very important at that time for understand the modernism. And it's one of the ideas of the world destroyed. So this is another way of connecting discourses in the artwork and in the art history. In the end, I think that the most important difference between semiotics and the other descriptive methods is that semiotician is like Sherlock Holmes looking for footprints of meaning to know how the discourse was or could be produced at that time and how it's recognized in our time and in our place. And just analyzing the gap, the desajuste, we can find something more interesting than just a description.
It's actually a wonderful comparison with the Sherlock Holmes. I actually always find the similarities with this character of Conan Doyle and the work of semiotician. Talking about semiotic tools in art, I always come up with a comparison to art criticism. And how do you think, what are the main difference between semiotician researching about arts and communication with the art and its audience and art criticism? And maybe should one learn from another?
Of course, they are very close. And I will be quite mean because I think that criticism needs to learn more about semiotics. I say that because we keep reading academic texts or art critics trying to answer questions like, what did the artist want to say? And I ask myself, if it is a real question, why are we so interested in that? The other subjacent question that the critics keep asking is, how does the artwork say something about the life of the artist? And we can find, for example, a lot of books or papers connecting the art career and the lives of the artists, each mirroring the other. For example, we have a lot of books trying to do that with Van Gogh or Frida Kahlo. And I don't know if that is a real question of if it's important, but at the same time, I'm not very in favor of the semioticians who treat the artwork as another communicational object. Because they often seem to forget the complexity of the art, as you said. The tradition, the aesthetics as discipline taught us, in a good or a bad way, I don't know, that art is another thing. It's about feelings, it's about another experience, it's about another thing, another type of object. So that implies, at least to know very, very well art history, aesthetic theory, exhibition story, curatorial discourses, art as an institutional word, artistic process, art market, and etc., etc., etc. So I think the main difference, but also the main similarity between semiotics and criticism are the specialization, which doesn't allow them to see all the possibilities, all the connections of disciplines and process. I want to say, the critics are very into the artistic meaning or the biographical meaning or the art market meaning or curatorial meaning. And the semiotician sometimes think that the tool is more important than the object. And this is not new at all. We can read that in a very wonderful way in Roland Barthes' text.
But still, if we're talking already about semiotics and we're talking about the tools which semiotics can propose, how do you think which one can be like major cornerstone brought from semiotic study to the art environment?
I think that the main tools given by the semiotics are the logical thought, because I say we came from Peirce school, so it's logical. Thinking in the network, again, Peirce, again, and learning about possible ways of connecting discourses, the semiosis, again. For example, in my university, that is the University of Art, the area of art critics, we use a matrix of analysis developed by Eliseo Verón, Marita Soto, Oscar Traversa, and Oscar Steinberg. It has 3 levels, and it goes from micro to macro observation. The first one is the most descriptive moment. We analyze the emplacement, the support, the media, and the dispositive of a discourse, an artwork or an exhibition or a museum. And in the second level, we analyze the genre and the style of the object. The genre, for example, in a museum is a museum of contemporary art, or the genre can be the still life. And then we have the different styles, that is Impressionism, Cubism. And in the last level, we analyze the enunciation, defined as a communicational situation produced inside the text, which generally includes an enunciator and a receiver who are not, absolutely not, empirical persons. And I think this is useful because when you start your career in sciences, and in particular in semiotics, you understand that you don't have to find something amazing about your object. So that's quite good. And you first have to find a good question to ask. That's the most important. Then you have to be sure that your toolbox will be able to allow you to answer your questions, or at least bring you close to that. I think the tools for artwork, but also for the other objects, but artwork, of course, we have to know very well art history and all the things we were talking about, but are the logical thought, matrices, micro and macro observation, and the most beautiful one is the eye training.
Marvelous advice, actually, for young semioticians who are just trying to enter this beautiful world and choose arts as their research object. I know you did work for several years with the curators in Buenos Aires, in New York, and London, and in Paris. And I would like to ask, did you notice that some of the curators actually use semiotic tools, but not naming them by semiotic name, obviously?
Yes, of course, of course. If you are analyzing an artwork, considering the points we were talking about, you are using semiotics. But the most important point, I think, that is you are using semiotics if you are trying to understand how the artwork try to say something to the public. If we are trying to catch the meaning between these 2 points, you are using semiotics. Now I cannot say if they are using semiotics in a good or in a bad way, but I'm totally sure that semiotics is everywhere.
As soon we come already so close to the idea of artwork, I would like to conceptualize an object of perfect artwork. You know, it's obviously impossible to talk about something as a perfect artwork as existing object. But if we think of this concept, how do you think? Does semiotic obtain the tools to create a perfect artwork?
I think that absolutely not. But because the problem is what you say, what's the perfect artwork? The one who makes you happy, the one who makes you cry, the one who makes you something of the world that you already know. And I think the worst question is if it's the most beautiful artwork, the most perfect one. I think it depends a bit of the place and the time we are talking about. But I think that the most beautiful or the most interesting about art is that nobody understands nothing at all, but we are still trying to catch something about the artwork, or we act as if we know something. And that's why I love semiotics, and I think that everybody who try to work with semiotics loves semiotics. That is because every time you try to have an answer, or you think you have an answer, you just discover that you have more and more and more questions. And that's the heart of the subject. It's the infinite semiosis, it's the impossibility of knowing everything about your object.
I think that guys in Hollywood definitely should listen to this interview and what you just said right now. Because seems they live in that mystery that they know what is perfect artwork, at least for this moment here and now. But, moving forward, I would like to ask you, what do you think about the idea that meaning is produced through the conflict?
I think I told you I love to be polemic, so I love the word conflict. Because if we are talking about semiotics and the heritage of semiotics, Mikhail Bakhtin, the Russian formalist, told us that the statement, the enunciado, is polyphonic. That means that in every statement we enunciate, there are a lot of other voices talking inside the statement. That includes history and culture, for example, of course, politics, economics, and all. That means that every sign includes a conflict between positions. For example, the word desaparecido, disappeared, in my country, in Argentina, includes a very dark moment of our history that was the last dictatorship. And when somebody says they weren't 30,000, we have a lot of voices talking behind that statement. And of course, that word won't have the same connotation in United States. So I think that conflict is the base of producing meaning. And it's important to understand that conflict is a positive thing. Because again, if we understand the meaning as a dynamic process, and if we understand that the object reminded by design is not showing all the time all its qualities, it's easier to understand that, for example, our signs, it includes, of course, the clothes, the movement, the gesture, the words, the looks, produce different meaning all the time. For saying that in a very, very, very simple way. And the meaning, it's a process which generates its effect in one place and one time. Again, the secondness in first. So if we understand that, we will be more conscious about how complex is communicate and communication. Just think about when we go on vacations, what happened with the way we look, or why it's so easy. I imagine that you see that in Italy, and it's very easy here in Paris to identify a tourist, or in the art world. Why it's so easy to know when someone is not used to came to a vernissage. So meaning it's about conflict, because there are so many as human beings. Anyway, we have also some kind of consensus. If not, communication will be impossible. But I found consensus more dangerous than the conflict.
Obviously, meaning is very important for semiotics, and nowadays many areas of semiotics, many fields of semiotics research on the value creation through meaning making. And what do you think? How arts today based on values and meaning making?
Well, I will try to answer that very beautiful question with two authors that I really love. I would like to cite the great curator, philosopher, journalist, Paul Preciado, who says, for example, that the museum today are semio-corporations, and the meaning they produce and values they produce are always behind the money, the sponsors, and the power. I admire Preciado, and I know what he wants to say. That it's about the art market, the politics, the museums, the global industries. But I think that this is not new. And this is not very far away from the Sixtine Chapel at that time and now. So I would like to be polemic again, and I will say that I really prefer the Catalanos banana rather than Michelangelo masterpiece, because I think the banana is more honest and transparent about the art institutions, the values, the power, the money that we consider important. So I will also cite Andrea Fraser. That's a wonderful artist and a wonderful writer. And she said that the most important is to understand that the art institutions include all of us, every person talking about art, every person taking a Canva and putting the Canva in the living room, or a copy of the Canva. So that is important because we are the responsibles of the values and the heroes we have. And that is our responsibility. So I think that since the market exists, we can say 16th century, the values of the art are the same. And I'm not totally sure that this is a shame or not, but it's our job to rethink about the things and the person we consider important.
I definitely absolutely agree and would sign on every word you just said now, because indeed it's responsibility of each of us to work on these values for us and probably for the future generations. And you know, today in the world full of digital transformation, indeed we can see in last 2 months that digital transformation is basically our life, because we were locked down in the houses, and the digital way, it was the only way to deal with the outer world. So how do you think how digital transformation influences the art perception process today, and perception of artistic values as they change?
Well, I think today, well, even more with this particular situation, but the last years, a lot of people feel very close to art. And even some of them can define themselves as artists, thanks to the new medias, the new technology. Because it's very easy to create a web page, an Instagram profile, or everything you need for being present in the media. But the definition of an artist is quite hard to explain. We can use the Dickey institutional theory, or we can talk about, well, the art institution again, saying you are an artist, you are not an artist. But the technologies for creating an artwork are important and are amazing now. I mean, we can watch movies, record with an iPhone. And I find this situation very beautiful, both making a movie with an iPhone and saying yourself, I'm an artist, I'm here, I have a web page, I have a profile, I have an Instagram profile, even if I'm not in a gallery, if I'm not in the art history, if I'm not in a museum. Okay, it's a particular moment that it's very amazing for me. But the thing that I find beautiful, because I like to be mean, but I don't know if it's beautiful, is that finally this situation shows us how strong and stereotypied, it's a very difficult word, is the social taste. Because even if we are creating a new profile now and we are creating a movie with an iPhone, we are repeating all the time the same image. Now that we have a lot of possibilities for creating, we use the same ideas of what is an artwork, what is an artist, what is art, even if we change the medias. So fortunately or unfortunately, the values didn't change. Finally, in the art world, people always want to be the same. They want to be different from the others and feel special. Well, I told you I like to be polemic, so I like to ask myself and ask in general, why is art so important? Why it's so expensive? Why it's so connected with politics and power? I don't know, maybe semiotics have the answer, but probably not me.
I know you paint too, and I personally admire your works done with your hands and through the physical materials, and the ones you create with your iPad and some digital tools. And I would like to ask you, in your own work, does semiotic help you to see something else, to change your style or to navigate yourself, to bring this rational part into the completely irrational process of art creation?
Well, it's very, very, very interesting what you said, because, and thank you so much. Because at the beginning I thought that semiotics doesn't help me at all. By contrast, I think that semiotics teach me how to think and think about thinking. So sometimes I need to forget that for a couple of hours. But now that you ask me about the medias, painting with materials and drawing with my iPad, I find the process very different, because when I'm painting with the reality, I will say, the canvas. Here is a portrait that I need to finish, but I don't know if I can to show you. It's Franz Zappa, the musician,
yes,
guitar player.
And your painting is wonderful.
Thank you. But well, this is just the artists, we have different points of view and kind of works, because painting is a work. So this is not my real work, I will say. This is something that I'm doing. Because indeed I'm working in l'histoire de l'art révisé. I'm repainting the icons of the art history. And that's the point where semiotics, it's absolutely useful, because I'm trying to recreate those canvas thinking in exactly the signs that make us believe that the world was a world of men, and the power is about men. And yes, it's a very feminist thing, but there are so small details that if you remove a hand and how that hand is touching a woman, you change all the meaning. And I think that that's possible just because the eye training given by semiotics and all these years going and going and going to the museum and trying to understand the dialogue between the artwork, and I think that that's just because of semiotics. It's amazing. Well, we love semiotics. I have a tattoo here with the Veron's theory. So what can I say?
What you just said is actually very inspirational, also maybe for the artists who just begin their way, because I think today on social media especially we can see many people who try to do art, but not in sake of becoming great artists, but in sake to understand better themselves. And I would even call it somehow hyper communication process, because they try to understand themselves through communication with the existing artworks, trying to reconstruct these artworks through themselves. And I really like your vision, because I think it says a lot about semiotics research and your personal approach. I also would like to thank you for helping me today in explaining semiotics and arts for our audience in a very approachable way, because obviously many people today still question what is semiotics, what you're actually doing, and I believe that one day semiotics should be like math or grammar, that everyone says like, oh yes, semiotics, we really need it, let's use semiotic approach to this problem.
I hope the same, and mostly for the heart of the semiotics, that is medias, communication, publicity, political discourse. It's really very, very important if we can understand what it's semiotics, and learning at school will be great. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you. Thank you so much for watching, and actually, if you're in Paris, I will leave the address where you can find Aluminé in her atelier. Did I say it right?
Yes, of course, Atelier.
So if you're in Paris, go and visit and talk about semiotics and art. So put your thumbs up and subscribe. And you know how we usually say in the end? That crazy semiotics music.
Be with you.
Yes. Do you want to say it together?
With semiotics be with you.
Some minutes later.
And may
semiotics
be with you.
be with you.